Disclaimer, I'm not a musician, so I'm not the best describing music.
So, this might not be obvious upon first look, but yes, I like Megadeth. Oh, hang on. Yeah, I think that helps me look a bit more convincing. I had to cut up my t-shirt to fit over my hoodie, and now it looks like a dress. So for today's video, I decided to do something a little different. I'm creating a playlist of songs from across the band's entire studio discography that can act as an introduction to the band for newcomers. Mainly this was made for friends of mine who weren't familiar with the band, but I decided, hey, why not make a video out of it? The grand rules for this list are, I'm only allowed to pick 3 songs per album. I don't want this to be made up of half songs from Rust in Peace, Countdown, and Peace Cells, and hardly any representation for the other stuff, like in some of their official compilations. I won't be including songs from EPs and soundtrack CDs, so nothing from Hidden Treasures or War Chest. I also won't be including any region-exclusive tracks. The way I went about picking songs was based on how iconic they were, how underrated they were, and personal favorites because you can't avoid bias in these list videos. Speaking of bias, I should note that I skipped over Risk and Super Collider. I don't feel the need to explain myself. Now, without further ado, let's talk business. For Megadeth's debut album, Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good, I picked Last Rites Love to Death, The Skull Beneath the Skin, and Mechanics. I went with Last Rites because it's the first song on the band's first album, so it felt appropriate. The Skull Beneath the Skin is one of the few songs on this album to use a slower tempo, and I felt that would stand out because of that. Don't get me wrong, as good as this album is, there's no denying that most of the songs feature the same speedy tempo, and that might make it feel a bit samey to thrash noobs. Also, it features the origin of the band's mascot, and some of Mustaine's signature morbid wordplay. Mechanics I included for its legacy, the most played song off the album live, and it represents the album's status as revenge against Metallica, most notably for their rework of this song, The Four Horsemen. For Peace Sells But Who's Buying, I picked Wake Up Dead, the title track, and Good Morning Black Friday. Wake Up Dead was the band's first major label single, so that felt appropriate. The title track is in the top 3 most iconic songs for the band, and still riles up old thrashers and pissed off 20-somethings alike. And Black Friday is an often overlooked track that showcases the band's signature style of dual guitar solos, years before another later inclusion would. For So Far So Good So What, I went Set the World Afire, In My Darkest Hour, and Hook in Mouth. This album is arguably a step down from the first 2. It's still a solid listen, but it doesn't have the same thematic identity shared amongst most of its songs the first 2 did, making it feel a bit more uneven. This one felt easier to pick a top 3 because of that. Set the World Afire was the first song Mustaine wrote specifically for Megadeth, and features a through line that many of his songs would share, that being commenting on current events and the dangers of nuclear weapons. Darkest Hour is one of the most emotionally charged songs Mustaine ever wrote, as well as one of his most relatable. We've all dealt with loneliness at some point and felt that we have no one to turn to. It's just a very vulnerable song. Lastly, Hook and Mouth lambasts censoring art. Despite the PMRC now being defunct, the song still holds up as overreacting parents forcing artists to censor their art will never truly go away. Ah, Rust in Peace, the band's best album and the most difficult to pick for. You can't go wrong with listening to any song off this record. So this was the toughest to pick my 3 because I had to leave out several favorites. In the end, I picked Holy Wars, The Punishment Due, Hangar 18, and Tornado of Souls. Holy Wars you have to include because it's in that top 3 spot of Megadeth's most iconic songs, and it's been the concert closer for 2 decades now, so there's no avoiding it. Hangar 18 is another of the band's most iconic tracks. It features some of the most iconic solos from the group, and it's a concert staple, so I had to include it for legacy. Lastly, I picked Tornado because it might just be my favorite Megadeth song of all time, and features possibly the coolest guitar solo ever by the talented J-pop guitarist, Matti Friedman. Countdown to Extinction, Megadeth's best-selling album and arguably the end of their classic era depending on who you ask. I picked Symphony of Destruction, Sweating Bullets, and Ashes in Your Mouth. Symphony is Megadeth's most iconic song ever made. It's the band's Enter Sandman. Everyone who's heard of this band even in passing knows Symphony. And with good reason. It's super catchy. I had to include it for its status. Sweating Bullets is another one of the band's most iconic and catchiest tunes. Say what you want about Mustaine introducing more mainstream writing elements into his music. It produced some good results for a while. Ashes in Your Mouth is the heaviest song on the record and includes the many twisty and turny elements you'd expect of Megadeth at their most extreme. Think of this as Countdown's Black Friday. Euthanasia was a bit tougher to pick for because each song uses the exact same tempo and aims to ride the line between thrash metal and pop radio rock, so there's less standouts despite being still a solid album. My picks were Reckoning Day, Train of Consequences, and A Tout Le Monde. Yeah, I know these are the safe picks, but they're probably the album's top hits for a reason. I did consider including Victory, which I think is an underrated hit, but since that's more of a self-indulgent victory lap, it works better for existing fans than it does newcomers. Cryptic Writings. This is where things start getting more controversial as the band moves further away from their underground metal roots in order to survive in a landscape where metal is becoming uncool. Some of the experimental stuff really works, while some of it falls flat on its face for me. My picks were Trust, Use the Man, and FFF. Trust is one of the band's most iconic singles, their most successful alt-metal song they've ever produced, and one of their best album openers. Former drummer Nick Menza was very critical of this album, but even he admitted that Trust is a banger. Use the Man is another hit to come out of Mustaine experimenting with alt-rock, and it features a story about drug addiction with the kind of weight and warning you'd expect from a former addict. There are arguably 3 old-school thrash songs from this album: She-Wolf, The Disintegrators, and FFF. I went with a third because, even though I feel it's tied with The Disintegrators for the most underrated on the album, its catchiness and killer solos put it over the edge for me. The World Needs a Hero was the band's attempt to return to their roots after the 90s saw them go further from their thrash roots by the album, and specifically in response to the commercial failure that was the Risk album. Seriously, had Risk or even Cryptic Writings taken off the way Metallica's Load and Reload did commercially, there's no guarantee that Mustaine would still be putting out metal albums. But with a band name like Megadeth, it pigeonholes you into a place where that level of mainstream success isn't possible. Personally, I don't like this album, which made this both easy and hard to pick a top 3 for. Regardless, I went with Burning Bridges, Dread in the Fugitive Mind, and Return to Hangar. Burning Bridges feels like a classic thrash song and is easy to bob your head to. Thrash comfort food. Dread in the Fugitive Mind is probably the most innovative, if that's even the right word for this, song on the album. It does a good job of combining catchy radio hooks with thrash. Return to Hangar is a sequel song which feels a bit like cheating, since it could just ride the coattails of its superior predecessor, but they're also never close to being as good. Just ask The Unforgiven 2 and 3. But this album didn't have any other songs I liked, so it wins by default! Yay! The system has failed with Mustaine's solo album turned Megadeth record due to contractual obligations. People's feelings seem to be a bit mixed on this one, with some claiming that this is where the band truly began to return to its roots, and others finding it to be a repeat of the past. Personally, I'm a bit split on the album as it has some genuinely great songs, but it's also front-loaded with all of its best material, a problem the next album would feature. I picked Blackmail the Universe, Kick the Chair, and Tears in a Vial. Blackmail and Kick the Chair are both solid thrash ragers that feature some killer solos from original lead guitarist Chris Poland. It also features Mustaine's classic railing against current events at the time, before his raging got more questionable. Tears in a Vial is my personal favorite song on the record, and I feel it's a very underrated hit. A love ballad about having to give up Megadeth for something new. Of course, that didn't happen in the end, but the emotion still works when applied to other areas. Honorable mention to Of Mice and Men for being Mustaine's most introspective song. For United Abominations, I picked Sleepwalker, Washington Is Next, and Burnt Ice. Sleepwalker and Washington are 2 of the top songs on the album, and they're the opening songs. That's not good in this case, considering that the rest of the album isn't able to follow their quality. Despite this, there's still some good material to be mined for your playlist. and Burnt Ice is a great album closer that sends the listener home on a high note, which is good considering that most of the second half leaves me cold. Endgame is easily the best Megadeth album of this modern era for the band, post 2004 or post Marty depending on who you ask. It features great songwriting, great guitar work, and is tightly edited to be the perfect length to send the listener home both satisfied and still wanting more. Although, I have to acknowledge the lyrics are the weakest part of the album, since it's here where Dave officially goes into full Dale Gribble conspiracy territory. Even so, you can't go wrong with this record. My picks were The Hardest Part of Letting Go, Sealed with a Kiss, How the Story Ends, and The Right to Go Insane. I feel like all of these songs are some of the best underrated hits in the band's history. Even Right to Go Insane, and that was one of the album's singles. I'll just end things off by saying that How the Story Ends is my favorite, and I feel like it's a perfect blend of old school songwriting with Countdown Euthanasia era songwriting. The water to 3N. Joining the ranks of Fant Forstick there, aren't you, buddy? Talk about a mixed bag. Some good, some bad, Dave going full Dale Gribble again, and this album seems to mostly go untalked about now. I picked Sudden Death, Public Enemy number 1, and Millennium of the Blind. Sudden Death is just so cool. It's the heaviest song on the album and acts as a great opener. Public Enemy is just so catchy that I have to include it. I know some people feel it's a bit too radio rock-esque, but I like it. Lastly, I picked Millennium of the Blind for a change in tempo and being a genuinely solid reworking of an old song from the Marty era. I consider the title track for inclusion of another ballad, but there are much better ballads in the band's discog to pick from. Dystopia featured another reboot for the band in lineup and songwriting. Overall, it's a solid album and probably their second best modern album after Endgame. My picks are the title track, Poisonous Shadows, and Conquer or Die. The title track won the band their first Grammy after years of nominations, but no trophy. Now, as someone with a very Diconian mindset towards art awards, I find them meaningless, and believe that the reasons they're given out to whoever wins are arbitrary at best. But I can't deny that the recognition elevates the track's place in the band's legacy. Poisonous Shadows is a killer power ballad and my personal favorite track on the record, and I think it gives the band's classic ballads like A Tout Le Monde and Darkest Hour a genuine run for their money. Lastly, Conquer or Die is one of 3 instrumentals the band produced, and might just be the best one in terms of interesting songwriting, but that's all subjective. The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead is both the band's latest album and the title of my dating life. This album had a troubled history leading to release, befitting the name, and I'd recommend reading the full story if you have the time. For this, I picked 3 of the record's big singles because they showcase the best of what this entry has to offer. Those being the title track, Soldier On, and We'll Be Back. Also known as the only 3 songs to be played live in concert. Look, Dave, I'm not going to tell you how to do your job. I understand that you have to feature some songs at every concert for first-timers, and I fully admit if I saw them for the first time and didn't hear Tornado live, I'd be disappointed. But I'm sure that you could have covered a few more songs live. It covered 7 for Dystopia. Also, maybe next time don't release an album with hard clipping on it. Just a thought. So that's my playlist of the best songs to introduce newcomers to Megadeth, be it your friends, your family, or even possibly you, the viewer. So, did you agree with my list? Did you disagree with my list? If so, what songs would you switch out instead of my picks? Drop a comment telling me how wrong I am and what a big dum-dum I am.